We shooters are an obedient bunch. This story is about how we can also be disobedient. I'm once again outside Devon and Cornwall Police Headquarters, home to their firearms licensing department, which does not want to talk about what it calls individual cases, where they send armed officers to the homes of legal shooters to take back guns and revoke certificates. We've covered some of these individual cases in the past few weeks. There have been more. This week I talked to a shooter who knows legally how to refuse to give up his guns. First, let's look at how obedient and dutiful we shooters can be. Deerstalker and fox shooter Dan Clark put in for a variation with Devon and Cornwall firearms licensing earlier this year.
My licence turned up 3 weeks later and it was blank. It was just a blank ticket. So I panicked and did what most people would probably do, and I contacted my firearms officer. He sort of said, can you give me 10 minutes to sort of find out what's going on? And then he got back to me, and I think that someone had had a bad day at the office and they just deleted everything.
Devon and Cornwall effectively deleted the records of his rifles. But because he's a shooter, he put them right, and because this took place before the Plymouth shootings in August 2021, Devon and Cornwall admitted his mistake and sent him the correct paperwork.
Because it was a blank ticket, it listed what calibers I could have, but all my firearms had been removed. There was nothing stopping me from going to Ian Hodges and picking up 4 new rifles and then walking out the door, and no one had been none the wiser. All my 4 rifles on my ticket were just gone. Not on my ticket, they weren't on anyone else's ticket, they were just gone until I raised the question and said, I think there's a mistake been made.
Something similar happened to Adam Troman, whom we featured recently. He had his guns removed by armed police. Back when Devon and Cornwall had no problems with him and he was reapplying for his firearms certificate, they sent him a blank ticket.
When I did my renewal, it was in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
I rang them up and said, you've not sent my license back or my certificate back. I've got firearms and shotguns. And she was so rude. She said, it's your responsibility to go, I've got this in on time. I said, I have got it in time. Next day, it's on my doorstep. They must have missed 50% of my guns. I've probably had 15 guns. There was firearms missing. And I rang them up and said, you're missing a load of stuff on my ticket. Do you know what they said? They said, write them on yourself. I said, I said, you want me to write my firearms on my certificate?
Like Dan, Adam sent his certificate back to the police and asked them to make the changes. Whether or not this shows incompetence by Devon and Cornwall, it shows duty by shooters, because that's what we're like. We don't want to put a foot wrong in case it leads to police revoking our firearms certificates. But are we too obedient? Here's what happens when a shooter who knows what he's doing refuses to hand over his firearms.
It was just gone midday. There was a knock on the door. Opened the door. 2 police officers there, 1 female, 1 male. The female was in front. The male was just outside the porch. She asked me who I am. So she said, are you Christopher Hart? And I said, yes. She said, this is going on memory now because this bit wasn't actually recorded. She said, we're here from Plympton Police Station and we're here to speak to you about a dispute with a gun shop, about a moderator, and we are going to have to take your guns as well. These were officers who were fully geared up for enforcement, so they had all their body armour on, and to be honest, I wasn't in a position to tell if they were armed, either with a sidearm or with tasers. But I do know they had all the front gear on, and the woman officer had a body cam, so she was recording me face on.
Chris is a target shooter at Duchy Shooting Association in Cornwall, a vermin controller and deer stalker. The dispute with the gun shop over a moderator led to Chris calling the police. He was surprised when police reacted, as they told him, by wanting to take away his guns.
So once I got over the initial shock of them being there, what they wanted to speak to me and they wanted to seize my guns, I told the both of them to wait there a minute. I'm just going to go and get something. Upon doing that, she shoves her foot in the door to stop me closing the door. So I said to her, "Can you move your foot, please?" "No, I'm not going to move it." So I called down Derek, who's the landlord. I called him down and I said, "Look, can you witness this?" I asked him to obviously witness her foot jamming the door and saying that she wouldn't remove it. And I said, they're not allowed in. They've got no authorization to enter in. They've got no warrant to enter. Do not let them in.
What happened next shocked Chris more than the arrival of the police in the first place.
The woman, I think it was the woman, or it could have been the man, he said something about the Keyham shooting. So I said, what are you talking about? And they said the Keyham shooting that happened this year. So then the penny dropped, and I said, what's that got to do with me?
Chris made an audio recording of the interview, as well as the CCTV footage he has. Here is what the police officer said to Chris.
And it's not just yourself. This is happening a lot. We're doing a lot of looking after people's weapons whilst the review takes place, and I'm sure you can understand that given recent events.
Well, I realised that this was a far bigger agenda going on than just me personally. That, this was a statement that because of this incident, that this tragic incident that had happened in Plymouth, there was now, the Devon and Cornwall Police were putting a policy to basically take everybody's guns away from them. That's how it appeared to me, and from what he was telling me. So I challenged them on that, and I said, well, you've got no lawful basis here for seizing my guns, because that is not a lawful basis for seizing guns, and my licence remains in force. It's not been revoked.
Chris felt able to argue the point with the police on his doorstep because he went through all this at his last firearms certificate renewal in 2016.
Basically, I went through the same process, get the renewal application form. I filled out the renewal application form with one difference. I had a diagnosis of being autistic. So that diagnosis came in 2013. What I didn't know at the time is that they were obviously jumping off the ceiling because I had a new diagnosis. And they actually believed I was mentally ill because I had a diagnosis of autism. So, and autism is not a mental illness. It's a development condition. So then I get a phone call from the FEO and she says, okay, we want to come round, see you, conduct your renewal interview. So that's normal. So she turns up on the day with another guy from licensing. It began with them saying, right, well, basically you've declared a new medical condition on your application. And we need you to get a psychiatrist to assess you for your fitness to possess firearms. In the meantime, we're going to have to seize your guns while this process goes on. So, of course, this was my first time ever a seizure or being under a review process, so I didn't have a clue what was going on. I did surrender my guns at the time, and I went through the process. I had a psychiatric report. I was given the all clear, and I got my guns back. So effectively what they were saying is because I was diagnosed with autism, I automatically met the condition that I posed a danger to the public or that it was likely I would cause a breach of the peace. So they were tarring, and these were the words from the Bass Firearm Team, they were targeting all disabled people with the same brush. It was direct discrimination.
Chris eventually extracted an apology from the police as well, and the 2016 fight for his guns gave him confidence to see off the two police officers on his doorstep in 2021. Since then, he's moved his guns to an RFD so the police can no longer seize them. Other people in Devon and Cornwall who allowed seizure are having trouble getting their guns moved from the police to local RFDs. It seems the message that Firearms Licensing wants to put out is that once they have your guns, you will never see them again. BASC's Firearms Department is taking an interest in what's happening in Devon and Cornwall. Here's Bill Harriman.
I am concerned that we may be detecting something that we can't quite interpret properly because we don't really know what it is yet. On one hand, it could be absolutely nothing, and that the revocations and seizures of firearms that we've heard of are nothing out of the ordinary. The other end of the spectrum would be a complete and utter overreaction driven by panic within Devon and Cornwall Police that there is going to be some sort of systemic failure shown when the Independent Office for Police Conduct makes its report into the Keyham shootings, or something which comes out of the coroner's inquests, and that there is this immediate, almost zero tolerance of anything clamped down to show that Devon and Cornwall Police are trying to do something and to almost deflect against that potential bad press that they might be having. On the 5th of December, I asked Devon and Cornwall Police's Freedom of Information Unit some questions about the number of revocations of firearm certificates, of shotgun certificates in each of the months that followed after the Keyham shootings in August.
Basque has also asked for a meeting with Alison Hernandez, Police and Crime Commissioner for Devon and Cornwall. I've no doubt that this is a crackdown on gun ownership by a police force. Let's hope Basque's actions can stop this gun grab from happening in this constabulary and, crucially, spreading elsewhere. In the last 2 weeks, I've heard of cases including a former member of a regional crime squad and of a serving police officer, both of whom have had visits from their colleagues, their firearms removed and their certificates revoked. The police officer has kindly agreed for me to tell his story in word form, and you can read that on our website. Link in the description below. Dan and Adam's cases show what good citizens we gun owners are.
It's only the slightest things, or you hear stories how someone said something to the wrong person, it's not even come from yourself, and then the police are at your door taking your firearms. So as an individual, I wanted to safeguard not only myself but my firearms ticket.
It does feel as if Devon and Cornwall are taking advantage of our guaranteed good behaviour. If police come knocking on your door, Chris's advice is at least file a complaint.
If the person believes there's no lawful basis for A, surrendering them voluntary, or having the police seize them, they should make a complaint. Because what they're recognising is A, there's no lawful basis, and if there's no lawful basis, then there must be an abuse of police powers has taken place. So if the person doesn't complain, they are consenting to abuse of police powers on lawful process.